Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Tesla Tidbits. This is another one, you all know my proclivity for third-party Tesla apps, and I've got another interview for you guys, and I've got David, who's the developer of the Nikola app, another one of the third-party Tesla apps out there. David, thanks for coming on the show and being the first to do video with me for one of the interviews.
Happy to be here.
How's it going?
Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. So as I typically do when doing one of these, how about you give the elevator pitch for Nikola to start off the show here?
Sure. So Nikola is a smartphone app that helps you protect and understand your Tesla. So I'm the solo developer of it. The way it works is basically Nikola takes data that Tesla normally throws away and then uses that to keep you apprised of the health of your vehicle. And then also kind of as a result of kind of collecting that information helps you keep track of a history of your driving, your charging, your battery health, etc. And most recently, I've also started adding some convenience features. So I think many of us wish that Tesla had a Apple Watch app. And so I recently added Nikola support for Apple Watch. So now you can unlock and lock your car from your watch, for example.
And actually, you mentioned the newer features because I've been kind of following you for quite a while. Nikola has come a long way since the beginning.
Thank you. Yeah, so I started it a long time ago. I had just left my job. I was managing a team at Apple. I had just left it, and I was taking the car on a road trip and was curious about all the data that the car was kind of spitting out. And first thing I did was just like a trip logger. So like Fitbit for your Tesla is kind of the first version. And I showed it to some friends and they were like, oh, you should put that on the store. And so when you and I connected, I think that was like 2017, 2018.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a while. So it was first just sort of like a trip logger. And then over time, I started adding more features. And so now it'll notify you if you leave your car unlocked, which you would think is uncommon, but it's actually surprisingly common for Tesla owners. Like
that does surprise me because the default is kind of walk up, lock, unlock, walk away, lock, and you kind of have to change that to behavior. And apparently, you're seeing people that do.
Yeah, so we found that a double-digit percentage of our users leave their cars unlocked accidentally each day. Until this feature came out. And so there are a few reasons why some people leave their keys in their car accidentally. By the way, the feature basically just sends you a note being like, hey, your car's unlocked. Like, and we have some rules that we apply to figure out like whether or not we think it's accidental or on purpose.
Right.
But what we think happens is some people leave their keys in the car. In some situations, Teslas will auto lock when you walk away, which is in many ways bulletproof for the way it's designed. But they also want you to be able to manually unlock the car and then keep it unlocked. So if you do a walk away door lock and you say, oh shoot, I need to get back in my car, and you manually unlock it, in some situations the car will just not relock and you won't realize that. And so
that makes sense.
So that's been a really surprising one where just a huge percentage of people have been leaving their cars unlocked.
All right, well, yeah, that's definitely something I wouldn't have expected. Actually, speaking of things you wouldn't expect, do you have anything else that you're actually, real quick, I don't know what you're tracking, but you probably see a lot of charge notifications from me lately. I know that's one of the features is the app will remind you if you've not plugged your car in.
Yeah, we've been seeing a number of those. I mean, I think in general, the sort of the fleet battery level has been sort of higher recently because people are just charging up, staying at home and not doing much. We are seeing some cases, we've had some users who have not been charging their cars. Maybe they normally charge at work, et cetera. And so there's sort of this lopsided distribution of some users are not getting those alerts when they did in the past. And some people are firing that.
My situation in particular is, I'm anal about my battery health. Obviously, I want to, maximize my battery on my now 5-year-old car as much as possible. So what I've been doing here is, when I try to keep the car in a 50 to 80% range is kind of what I'm doing at all times. So I'll charge it to 80 and I'll use it. I'll get my little bit of phantom drain going down and use the car. And then when it's below 50, I'll go ahead and plug it back in and recharge it. So I keep getting alarm bells saying, hey, you need to plug in. You're not plugged in. You're below, whatever. from multiple apps actually. So around 10 o'clock at night, my phone goes bonkers. But that's kind of my situation right now. Is yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not putting any undue stress on the battery that it may not need. So I just let it go. But to that point, again, going back to where I was, the data that you're seeing. So that's again surprising that you're seeing that many walk away unlocks and leaving it unlocked. Anything else in the data that's kind of sticking out at you that's interesting?
Yeah, I've learned a bunch. So there are a few different ways that I think of it, of the data that I've seen. So one is viewing the data is just an interesting sort of window into Tesla and how they operate. So there's one side of things where it's like, oh, that's an interesting choice by Tesla to deploy this major change to their software on a Friday afternoon, right? So that's like
in IT, for those that aren't in IT, deploying on a Friday, doing anything on a Friday, not a good idea. Not if you want to have a fun weekend, at least.
Yeah, so Tesla's affected a few of my weekends in that way. But in terms of the actual data coming out of the cars, the data that I tap into, just for context, there's a lot of data that powers the official Tesla app that basically isn't used in that app, or maybe was used in some sort of cursory way. I think, so there are a few different things. So, one, for example, is there are all sorts of like vestiges of old ways of operating that Tesla had. So there's like some fields in the API, basically some fields in their data that they don't use anymore. And so if you look in the wrong place, every single Tesla, when you look at their data stream, registers as a Model 3, which is obviously not correct. And so there was a period of time where I looked in a specific area to figure out like, what image of the car do I show? Because everyone wants to see an image of their car. Right. And there was a period of time where everyone was getting shown a Model 3, and then I had to figure out like what's going on here. Let's see, another thing that's been coming out of the data recently, and this is more of an aggregate trend, is I'm seeing really interesting trends in terms of just drives being way down. And this isn't surprising. It's just matching. It seems pretty well correlated with the data that Apple and Google are putting out in terms of just the number of miles being driven has dropped by a lot.
I'd be curious because there's a lot of states beginning their reopens now to see how quickly and in what kind of like sections of the country you see the drives increasing.
Yeah, I should do that analysis. Yeah, I can follow up with that. I don't know what the breakdown is. We have hundreds of users across the world, and so we should have a decent sort of view into that. Obviously, there's a high concentration where there are a lot of Teslas. So California, we have a bunch of users.
Right.
Norway, we have a bunch of users. Yeah, no, that would be interesting to see. I'm trying to think of other interesting trends that we've seen in the data recently. I mean, I think sort of more generally, maybe I'll come up with some more like other interesting trends I've seen in the data in a bit. I'm kind of blanking on
sorry,
broad ones. But
actually, you mentioned the Model 3 thing. So I know, like, and I'm trying to remember this in kind of seeing what folks have been that have been doing development have been talking about. But as I recall, there seemed to be like getting at the codes of like the options that are on the car is kind of a pain, and knowing what those options are, and that's part of your issue, maybe part of the issue with the model that you had, as well as like what wheels are on the car, I think was a big problem at a point. And
that's completely right. Yeah. So the Tesla data that I get from the vehicle lists option codes. One of those option codes is it's basically what car is it. So for a while I was just getting everything's a Model 3, which is a problem. And so I was able to figure out, okay, is the car Model 3? Is it whatever? But then I started having issues with the wheel configurations. And so obviously in the app, you want the car to, like, people spend a lot of money on these cars. We have a strong attachment to our cars. Like my car's named Sauron, as in Lord of the Rings Sauron. If someone like showed me the wrong picture of the car, I'd be like kind of upset. So like, it's very important to get this right. So anyway, so what I had to do is basically anytime Tesla added a new configuration to their configurator, I would actually have to go in and then map that to some very like ambiguous configuration codes that I'm seeing from users in the fleet. And so there's actually, in a few cases where I can't kind of figure it out through just software engineering, basically what'll happen is a new configuration will appear I'll get paged on my phone and I'll go in and add it. And it sounds kind of unscalable, but Tesla doesn't make that many configurations.
Right. And actually, I was going to mention too, you have to be, as a developer, you have to be fairly stoked that they're really kind of limiting the options that are on the cars anymore. I mean, compared to the early days where you used to be able to configure every little detail on the car, now there's like only a couple, like beyond color, wheels, and full self-driving, there's not really much anymore.
Yep, and the color and wheels are the only ones that generally affect that external configurator image, and so those are the ones that I focus on.
And then when they add a new vehicle like Model Y just coming out, how many Model Y users you seen out there? Because the shutdown, there's not many out there.
I've been surprised. So we've seen dozens. I don't know, maybe about 50. I'll need to check, but I've been surprised. I set it up initially, like I did with the Model X. I set it up. It's like, okay, first new Model Y that I see in the fleet, like page me. I want to make sure that everything's working and that they're seeing the right data and everything's getting captured. And I get the wheel configurations and colors and all that. I've seen a bunch actually. I've been surprised by how much faster the Model Y ramp has been than the Model 3 ramp.
They did say on the earnings call or the investor letter, I forget which, I think it was both actually, that Model Y, they produced more Model Y in the first quarter than they did the first 2 quarters of Model 3, which is really impressive.
That seems pretty consistent with the data that I have. I mean, so before the Model Y came out, the Nikola fleet, and this is probably representative of the Tesla fleet on the road of about, say, a million vehicles on the road. The Nikola fleet was like 50% Model 3, maybe then 30% Model S, and then the rest Model X. And so it'll be very interesting to see how the percentages kind of shift around.
Model Y will take over second place, if not first place of that eventually, is my opinion at least. Because, I mean, we love our crossovers here in the US. And it's a hulked up Model 3, and Model 3 is already beautiful. So, I mean, what's not to like? I mean, I know some people were disappointed about, excuse me, about that it didn't really look a lot different than Model 3. But I personally thought, A, Model 3 is beautiful, so that's not a bad thing. And B, that was the perfect thing for them to do, considering they wanted to have the efficiencies related to production. And boy, it seemed the fact that they were also profitable on Model Y in its first quarter of production too, which they haven't been able to say that about any of their vehicles. So
yeah, it's impressive. I mean, if for some reason I had to get rid of my Model S, the Model Y is what I would get for sure.
Oh, you're rocking an S too. Wow. Old school guys here.
Yeah. So I got the car. What did it? I wanted a Tesla for a long time. What did it was in late 2014, they announced the autopilot, and I was like, I think I got to do it. And so early 2015, I got the Model S. And so
my goodness. So you bought yours brand new then? I did. And you have an early 2015. I also have an early 2015, just used. I did not get it brand new, with AP1. So, and she's an 85D. What do you got over there?
I have one of the weird sort of unicorn P85s with autopilot. So they announced. So they started producing autopilot vehicles before they announced autopilot.
Right.
And there was a brief kind of period where they were making P85s that had autopilot, and so I managed to get one of those. It was like a showroom model, so it had 1,000 or 2,000 miles on it, but basically new. And it's great. I mean, when I first got it, I was like, this car is a monster. Right now, it's kind of tame by comparison to some of the newer ones, but I love it. It's been a great car. Yeah,
what's not to love when you have your instant roller coaster sitting on your right foot there. Even my just standard 85D is far and away the quickest car. I owned a traditional muscle car at one point. I had a 94 Pontiac Firehawk with a 350 engine, LT1 engine in there. And that thing, it wasn't great at the drag strip, by most people's standards. I think I turned a 1402 on it, but this car would torch that car in every way. It's not even close. I really wish, for a lot of reasons, my dad was alive to have seen it, because he was the one that kind of introduced me to, hey, there's electric cars out there. This is a cool thing that you should look at. And he also grew up with muscle cars, so he really would have appreciated. He got to see my Civic Hybrid, and he marveled at that. I could not imagine what he would have thought of a Tesla. His mind would have been blown.
Yeah, it's unreal. Like, definitely no comparison. It's been fun to see more and more of my friends kind of come into the EV ecosystem. Every maybe month now, I'll get an email that's like, hey, I just bought a Tesla and have been using your app, and it's like some friend of mine that I didn't know got a Tesla, and it's been really fun to sort of like experience that through sort of that new experience through my users of Nikola. It's been kind of fun to observe that.
That's pretty cool to have that kind of cross section there. To you got friends that just like, oh yeah, I finally got a Tesla, and I'm just going to get this app, and my buddy doesn't even know I'm using his app.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other situations. I've gotten a lot of good user feedback and like suggestions from people. So I'm adding Apple Watch complications soon. So complications are basically just the little screens on Apple Watch. So I'm going to add a way that you can glance at your watch and see your car battery level. And that's by request from a friend of mine. Turns out that's actually really complicated to do because you want to have
a complication.
Indeed. That was not, no joke intended, no pun intended. It's tricky to do because you want accurate data from your vehicle, but you at the same time don't want to be constantly pinging the vehicle and making it wake up. And so turns out like a lot of the technology behind Nikola, behind making this app, is sort of smarts around just getting data from the vehicle when we need it and like no other times. And so anyway, so hopefully the complication won't be too tricky to build. I think probably about 50 or 60% through building it. Like I have the kind of a rough sense for what the visuals will look like. But anyway, so I've been getting a lot of good feedback and ideas from friends. Even Siri, and like, I don't use Siri a lot. Like I use Siri for setting timers, but I had one friend who's like, I go to my car all the time and I forget my keys and I'm carrying stuff. I would really like to be able to just go to my watch and say like, unlock my car.
Yeah, unlock the car, pop the trunk. Those are the two big ones. And I'm with your friend on that one because I'll be coming out of Walmart with, my 3 kids and with no wife with me, just by myself. And I'm laden down and I just really need that trunk open. And so being able to go to the watch and be like, hey, pop the trunk, or hey, unlock the car, is definitely more useful than you might think it is. If you don't, I think people with kids would super appreciate that.
Yeah, I imagine.
So speaking of kind of like anecdotes like that, you mentioned when we were chatting before getting on the show that you had some interesting user stories that you might want to relay to the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much every feature in the app owes its genesis to an experience that either I had or a user had. And so I'll tell you one, or actually I'll tell you two. So one is, the sort of, one story is I left my car key in my car I was in Las Vegas and I left my car key in my car. Ooh. And I came back and discovered that it was unlocked. And I really wish that I had known about that. And so that's why I put in unlocked alerts, right? And so that's why I wanted to be notified about that. Now, so that, that feature has been really helpful for a lot of people. It's like, I was checking into this hotel. I, left my car there for the few days that I was there, and I came back and it's like the mirrors were out. And I was like, oh no. Like, yeah. And so I had to call Tesla and they were like, yeah, here we looked at the logs and it was not opened between when you left it and now.
I would have never even thought to call Tesla on that because I actually have had that situation before where I walk up and it's every Tesla owner that if you have auto folding mirrors, it's your worst nightmare. If those mirrors are out, your car was not locked.
Yep. And I see that still all the time. And so that was another sort of reinforcing reason to build that feature. So, okay, so the more recent feature that I built, I'm calling it valet mode joyride detection. Things like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. These cars are very nice and like very attractive for someone to go take on a joyride. So I had one user in Europe who took his car into a car, like a window tinting place, dropped the car off, and in the middle of the night, he checked the Tesla app, and the car was driving, and it was driving very fast, and it was not near the dealer. And so he's freaking out. And so apparently the next morning he goes into the window tinting shop, the car's there, and he's like, okay, what's going on here? And so he opens up Nikola and he's like, hey, owner, like, here's the, I don't know what this is in kilometers per hour, but like, at like midnight or 2 a.m., this car was going like crazy fast, driving around, and like, here's the path that it took, and here it is coming back at this time of day. So it turns out that the owner's brother had like access to the shop, decided it would be fun to take the car out for a joyride.
Oh my.
Now I was just like stunned. And so he's like, yeah, thanks for your app for like recording this info. And I'm just like, God. Another like funny side note of that whole thing, the guy was like, oh yeah, it worked out fine. They gave me a discount. I'm like, that's it? Like they gave you a little
it's like, not free after you, I was like, could have potentially wrecked my car. Yeah, I would have been furious while like showing them my phone, be like, hey, what in the world was going on here? and then on top of that, and the other thing too, I doubt he left them a charging cable. Like you wouldn't notice that the car was like significantly down on battery. Like whoever did that was not too smart.
Yeah. So no, that person probably wasn't super savvy. They got an apology from the owner. So what I ended up doing is building valet mode joyride detection. So basically what you do is if you put your car somewhere, like you take it to a window tinting shop, or it's getting service, or you're at the valet, if you put the car in valet mode, a few things will happen. If it drives any material distance, I think it's like over a quarter of a mile or something, you'll know. If it goes fast, you'll know. And after it's done, so as soon as you end joyride, as soon as you end valet mode, you'll get a message, push notification and an email if you want, basically saying like, okay, here's a report, like your car basically
that's very cool,
1 miles, or moved zero, like didn't move at all, and its top speed was X. And
that is super cool.
And so I built that, and turns out it was like, after I built all of Nikola, it was like relatively easy to build that, because I had done all this work to figure out like, okay, when is the car driving? When is it not driving?
You've done the hard work already.
Yeah, and so I added that, and people have really liked that. It turns out valet mode isn't used that often. I think I'm sending out those reports maybe just a few times a day, whereas the unlocked alerts, it's like dozens of times a day that I'm sending those out. But still really valuable. You want to know if someone's,
right.
Like, we all have a pretty strong emotional attachment for Teslas, right? Like,
and actually, I'm trying to remember on valet mode, because it's changed over time. If I remember correctly now, not only does valet mode limit the speed that the car can go, locks the trunk and the glove box, but I think it automatically puts it into chill mode now too, if I remember correctly.
Last I tried it, I don't know if they called it chill mode, but definitely the acceleration was restrained. I don't remember how much. Like, it was still a pretty performant car, but
yeah, that's the fun thing, because I have tried chill mode out just to mess around with chill mode, and yeah, it's still faster than most cars out there. Even maybe we need super chill mode, Netflix and chill mode. I don't know, but
yeah, something. Yeah,
that's a different mode maybe.
I don't think chill mode even restrains the acceleration that much. It just like restrains the jerkiness of the acceleration. Like you can't, like if you floor it, and like you'll get pushed.
It's not that head pinning
it'll take
acceleration anymore.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a performance car like yours.
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. So
yeah.
So anyway, so hopefully fewer sort of joyride situations like that. I haven't heard too many stories like that from users, but I think we all sort of have this fear that, kind of like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, someone's going to take your car and go have a little too much fun with it.
Yeah, anytime I have to, and that has been rare. I mean, it's pretty much been Tesla service. So I live in Ohio, so valet is not as common a thing around here as it might be elsewhere in the country. That I have had opportunities to do so, and actually, I did have one situation where I wish I had done it. I was parking at a amusement facility that will remain nameless to protect the guilty. But I had the option to, when I was checking in, to valet the car, and the valet cars get put in a separate place that's not public. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay the money for that, and it's not that long of a walk to get the stuff up, so it's not any big deal. We'll whatever, right? And then that was when someone decided to draw a penis on my hood with the in the rain. My dash cam caught them. I turned that footage into their security, but nothing ever came of it. I got an apology, and that was it. I'm like, yeah. So if I ever go back to said facility ever again, I will definitely be valeting the car in the future. Keep it away from the public.
Yeah, I've had people like leave notes now and then. Fortunately, yeah, not too much. My car obviously is built-in dash cam. There's no Sentry mode, but I did 4 years ago put in. I have a black view camera. So
well, then that's what mine was. I have a black view 650 with the front and rear.
I have the same one. Yeah, I haven't looked at the footage, frankly, in a long time because my car hasn't been getting too much use recently. But yeah, that's what I have.
It's interesting because other than that one instance, and something I really wish that and I think that Blackview on their newer models does do this, but you don't, to distill that footage down when something has happened, and it doesn't necessarily trigger the event on the camera. I really wish they put allow us older users, maybe, because I think it's a cloud feature that's detecting this, but to skip to where something's happening in your footage, if you don't have an event there, that because it took me significant effort to find that dude, because I mean it happened like either the first or the second day I was staying there over the course of 5 days.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm like, I found out what you'll laugh, because this is a kind of a Mac thing here, and being an Apple developer. I downloaded the entirety of my Blackview SD card onto my Mac, and so what I started doing was just looking through the thumbnails to try and find something, and lo and behold, I caught the guy in the act like this in one of the thumbnails, and I'm like, hallelujah, there it is.
Yes.
But yeah, and actually I know, speaking of third-party apps, I know there's another app out there that the name is failing me right now, but they do that. So if you have that third-party app apart from, and I think you have to have Sentry mode, so it doesn't help us. But if you're looking for that in a Sentry mode, look out for some of the Sentry mode viewer apps out there, because they're out there, and that's a big helpful feature. Take it from me.
Oh yeah, I believe that. I mean, the Blackview is like pretty good. My main issue is with the software, and basically I had tried, like, anytime I wanted to look for anything, I found myself saying, I'm not going to use the Blackview software. It's got X, Y, or Z problem. Just give me a QuickTime video.
The software is not good. Even the iPhone app is not great. It's improved because actually it may not have been so I went from Android to iPhone while owning that. And the iPhone app is better than the Android app, because the Android app, I could never, ever download a file via Wi-Fi from the camera. It just never worked. And even with the iPhone app, even though you're literally joining the Blackview as a Wi-Fi hotspot, it is absurdly slow downloading from that thing. So yeah, I typically, it's funny, other than that one incident, usually what I use the dash cam for lately, if you've followed my Twitter feed at all out there, has been capturing weird things that have happened while I've been driving. So my saving the life of a possum the one time, to the people doing weird things, like the guy that decided to that was recognizing me and like stuck his phone barely out of his sunroof to take a picture of the car. That was a good one too. But yeah, I don't typically have to use it for security, thank goodness.
I've had a few cases where I wanted to look at the footage. Like I've actually had 2 cases where someone cut me off and then gave me the finger, and it's always like, what? Like, and that, and then
what did I do?
As a normal human, you're like, can I swear, by the way? Okay.
Feel free.
Am I the right is always the question, right? And so like I want to go back and like look at the footage. And in those cases, it turns out I wasn't. They cut me off, confirmed by the footage.
Usually the other guy is the jerk because he saw a Tesla and he's very jealous of not being able to drive a Tesla for some reason.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I got so annoyed with trying to transfer the footage off of the Blackview camera that what I started doing is I put a Raspberry Pi, which is like a little, a cheap little computer, basically a like tiny little chip. I think I have one here. I've got one in this bag. It's like small enough to fit in this little bag here. And I put a case on it and I put it in my car. And what it would do is basically, oh, there you go. It would stream the video as it was saved from my dash cam onto the Raspberry Pi. I would pull it onto the Raspberry Pi, and then I could do like a fast export to my computer when I was nearby, because just downloading from the Blackview took forever. But for whatever reason, I could stream it slowly to the Raspberry Pi and then pull it off.
That is a very technical solution. It's kind of a sledgehammer solution that shouldn't be necessary, but there you go.
Yeah, for those of you who have Sentry Mode, be thankful that you don't have to sort of take the
amen to that. You all with the AP 2.5 hardware that permits that. That is a big deal, and especially actually with the viewer that they've now added to the car recently here with the latest software updates. That makes it a whole lot easier than we have it. So be very thankful for that.
Yeah, definitely. I have a few other, I was just trying to think of like other interesting data tidbits that I have sort of observed from the Tesla API. A few just kind of occurred to me. We kind of talked about this earlier.
Good.
One is, it's been really interesting to observe the sort of variability and changes in charging rate by supercharger. And so now that, there are, the urban chargers that max out, I think at like 80 kilowatts. Then you've got these like version 3 chargers that go super high. Yeah, which would love to be able to use that, but I can't. Then you have some interesting situations. So like I have now a 5-year-old Model S sometime in the last year, and I could actually pinpoint the exact date that this happened because I have this data.
I know what you're about to say.
My max charging rate got cut in about half. So I used to be able to get like at most, so if the car was relatively empty, go to supercharger, I'd get maybe 100 kilowatts, right? Maybe 105, maybe 110. But now the highest I can ever get with no one else nearby, no matter what supercharger it is, like whatever the conditions, I can't get more than about 50 or 60.
Ooh, wow, that's interesting.
So I've had a few users who reported this, and so what they did is they went into Nikola and they did a data export, so you can export it and export your data and like see your history. And so they took it to Tesla, and what they figured out is Tesla will actually, for battery protection reasons, after you've done a certain
I heard about this.
Charges, they will limit the speed at which they can charge the car, which is somewhere between maddening and just unfortunate. It kind of depends on what day you ask me. Like I'm not taking a ton of road trips right now, but that's been kind of interesting to observe, especially with kind of earlier Model S.
I heard that based on like number of supercharging sessions, this was a story back in, I want to say like 2018 that people started noticing that. That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to go the direction where it goes. You're going to say that your maximum battery capacity went all of a sudden, because that's what happened to me. I think that was if I go look, while you talk, I'll look to be sure. I feel like that was in January that happened. And all of a sudden I lost about 5% of range like that. And that's had to have been an algorithm update on their side, because there's no way that it just like it was a dramatic drop down.
So we do also track that. We don't presently expose it. So we track that through battery health monitoring. We don't expose it in the app, but we're actually planning to. If anyone wants to,
yeah, I saw that you were getting ready to do that. That is a different app, by the way, that I get that out of.
Yeah. So when we have that data, it's actually essential to make sure that we're doing a good job and to give our users kind of useful information. I have generally been surprised with how stable battery health has been across the fleet. Like these batteries are really impressive. Like so just by comparison, lithium ion phone battery in my phone, I got this phone in September. I'm already like, I've lost 8% on my iPhone, and that's high. But you know, I think I've lost in the 5 years that I've owned my Tesla, I think I've lost 4% total. And so
that was where I was sitting. So when I got the car, 265 was what it would charge to on a or sorry, 262. 262 was the maximum I could get out of it. And then until the situation that happened here, I was still getting somewhere between 250 and 255 as my max charge, which over the course of almost 3 years of me personally owning it and the car being 5 years old and it currently 133,000 miles on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
so, but then this happened, and there's a very precipitous drop that you see. And now I'm like low 240s is my best.
Interesting.
And it, like I said, it's over the course of, I went from 120,000 miles on it, still kind of humming along between 250 and 255. And then now between 120 and 130, all of a sudden you see this drop, and now I'm between 240 and 245. So a full 10-mile range difference on my top end.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some situations like that. I think my understanding of how this tends to play out is there's like a true actual overtime degradation in the battery, but what tends to be most noticeable,
and then there's the algorithm.
And you hinted at this, is like they'll make some algorithm change, you'll do a software update, and suddenly, according to the numbers, your car is just not as, doesn't have the capacity that it did before. But obviously it's not like that software update truly hurt it. There's like something else over time that did it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, this has been a good conversation. Why don't you let everyone know where they can find Nikola and how much they will contribute to you to do so.
Sure. So you can find us at nikolaapp.com, Nikola app.com. And if you want to check out more details, I made a special page for Tesla Tidbits viewers/listeners. So nikolaapp.com/tidbits. There it's available for 20 or 40% off, depending if you do like monthly or annual. So it's normally $5 a month, and it's available for $4 a month now. And if you want a discount, it's available for I'm doing the math. I think it's $3 a month. And so if you want to do the annual plan, I make it available with a trial. So try it out, give feedback. No worries if you don't want to pay for it. I'm mostly interested in just getting feature suggestions from people. And so, yeah, nikolaapp.com /tidbits. And oh yeah, one more thing. If you want to try out Apple Watch complications or any of the other new features I'm working on, drop me a line, like Siri. Drop me a line and I can add you to test flight. I have about 10 test flight slots available that I can give out. And yeah, it's been fun. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's fun to talk.
Well, David, it's been a pleasure having you on as well. To the listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed the conversation here. I hope to have more and more interviews here when I find folks that A, want to be on, and B, we've got something interesting to talk about. So as always, keep it charged and hit the road.